I would request the chair to kindly introduce the speaker of the day.
Thank you so much, madam. So, before chairing this session, I would like to express my gratitude of appreciation to the organizers. So, thank you so much for conducting this mega, a resourceful conference, which could be a beneficiary for many of the students aspiring to become a researcher. So this conference will help them to give more sufficient knowledge and insightful information to equip themselves to become clinicians or researchers. So thanks to Dr. Satya ma'am, the principal of physiotherapy department, and her team for being a part of this organizing the conference. So with this, I would like to start my session. So I welcome Dr. Valentine C. Jones. So Sir is a recognized leader in physical therapy, serving as professor at University of Santo Thomas and director of JBI Philippines, the Center for Health Research and Movement Science, and clinical data analyst at St. Luke's Medical Center. He was named 2024 Outstanding Professional in Physical Therapy by the Professional Regulation Commission of the Philippines and has received the most DOSTPC HRD Best Mentor Award. He is a passionate advocate of evidence-based healthcare. He is a member of JBI, NRCP, and PPTA, and actively an advanced researcher, a clinical innovator, and mentoring in many pain management and rehabilitation in the Philippines. So with this welcome note, I invite Dr. Valentine to give a very informative presentation. Sir, the stage is yours.
Good morning, everyone. Namaste, India. I hope everyone is okay. I admire the Indian culture. You always wear your gown with pride, and that's why I decided to wear the Filipino modern version of a barong. Thank you. I'm a physiotherapist. Every time there was an instant wherein a patient, a student came into the clinic and she has severe low back pain. She was a gymnast. I knew for that particular instance that I needed to manipulate her sacroiliac joint. I asked her to lie on her back. I pulled her leg, and then lo and behold, that student came out walking without pain. I was confident that spinal manipulation will work on her because there is a moderate evidence to support its use. Spinal manipulation can relieve pain in the short term. I'd like to share with you this journey, the journey of using evidence-based techniques, evidence-informed practice, evidence-informed assessment using the JBI lens. Please allow me to introduce what JBI is. Okay, I'm just getting the clicker, and I'm timed. That's the JBI Adelaide. The JBI Adelaide is found in South Australia. It's the biggest research center, so to speak, when it comes to evidence-based healthcare. It's situated in the heart of the Adelaide city we're in. I remembered when I was there back then in 2010 to 2013, every time my neurons are fried with research work, I just go to the Rundle Mall, because I'm a Filipino. We have that culture of mall, the mall culture. So I go to the Rundle Mall and then give myself some headspace. And then after that, I go back to the office and work again. It's a lovely city. And the JBI is actually a research organization under the Adelaide University. Oops. What is the mission of JBI? We are supporting and promoting evidence-based healthcare. We want our patients to use or to receive the best evidence in order for them to receive the best care that will help them solve their pain problems or their functional dysfunctions. In that way, the society becomes healthy and productive. That is what JBI hopes for. We are a leading global evidence-based healthcare research organization. We harness research, we teach research, we actively disseminate what we found, and JBI also has a software known as the JBI Summary, okay, that will help us synthesize voluminous evidence. And our organization cuts across not just 40 plus countries, but over 90 countries worldwide. It is a big organization wherein we partner with the different experts in the world. What is our purpose? To improve health outcomes. How are we going to improve health outcomes? By synthesizing evidence and making sure that the stakeholders who are our patients will use the evidence that we've synthesized. Okay. Let me just go through those in the latter slide. This is a picture of the JBI collaboration centers. That is where the Philippines is. Is there a pointer? I'll just go there. That's where the Philippines is. The file has not been updated yet, but there are 2 JBI collaboration centers in the Philippines. And our center in the Philippines was the first JBI Philippines Center for Health Research and Movement Science. We are at the University of Santo Tomas. I'm proud to say that not because of the accreditation, but because of our mission and vision to better the healthcare delivery in our country back home, in the Philippines. That is our main purpose. That's why we are proud in presenting that we are part of the JBI collaborating entities. This is the University of Santo Tomas. I was actually with a very good professor, and I think it was 2 days ago when I was passing by this road and I saw the edifices of your building. I was really awed. It was really nice. It's majestic, and I love your school grounds. You have multiple buildings which are majestically standing on your grounds. We have one UST main building, okay, which also looks like European in its, when you take a look at it. The University of Santo Tomas is actually in Manila, Philippines. The JBI Collaboration Center or entities gather together yearly. After visiting you, I'll fly to Kochi, India, and I will be able to meet the 90+ directors from the JBI collaboration entities. It's a yearly activity that we are engaged in to ensure that we are updated on what we are doing. What is the main thing that we're doing? We create evidence synthesis hub, which is usually given to universities, wherein the academic professors, academic researchers will synthesize the evidence. Whatever we've synthesized, we transfer to our partner hospital. That is where we are ensured that the synthesized evidence is used and will be used by the patients themselves. That is how we complete the loop. I'll show you in further detail how we practically do that. We've got different activities. We've got the JBI systematic and scoping reviews, which are updated likewise. We've got implementation projects and case reports. There's the rapid evidence synthesis. There is mentorship from the JBI Adelaide. There is a clinical partnership engagement, and so forth and so on. The JBI Philippines CHRMS has grown in hips because of JBI Adelaide. It's not just a partnership, but it is a family relationship wherein we ask them to train us and they give support to that training. By now, we are at that point, the JBI Philippines CHRMS is at that point wherein our university provides synthesized evidence to our hospital. That will never happen unless JBI has take its place in our scenario. Let's talk about evidence-based healthcare. Who are physiotherapists here? Can you raise your hands? All right, so physiotherapists, we're of the same kind. Who are pharmacists here? I know there are heaps of pharmacists in here, nurses. Oh, a lot of nurses. I salute you. The nurses, they know about what I'm talking about. It's about evidence synthesis and evidence implementation, and they've been using that back home in my country time and again because they want to improve healthcare delivery in their place. I'll give you a scenario. One of my patients came in and she has myofascial pain syndrome. Painful neck. That's the patient. She came in. I know that dry needling works. That's the best available evidence over there. It actually works. There is a moderate certainty of evidence that dry needling can deactivate trigger points and decrease the pain of patients with myofascial pain syndrome. Best available evidence. I am a physiotherapist. I am trained to do dry needling, and I can deliver the treatment to that patient. That's professional judgment. The circle that you see there, down below. Now, are we allowed to do dry needling back home? Are you allowed to do dry needling here in Bangalore? Yes, you are allowed. That's context. That is context. We are allowed to do dry needling back home. That's context. Those are the three circles that are ticked in that true clinical scenario. However, this is the gist. This is the ultimate decision maker. My patient doesn't like dry needling. She'll faint. So I did not do the dry needling on her, even though 3 of the 4 circles have been ticked. The patient's preference is always important. It's of primordial importance. Those four circles tell us what evidence-based healthcare is all about. It is multifaceted, and it actually evolves over time. JBI has the FAME approach. What is that FAME approach? F is for feasibility, A is for appropriateness, M is for meaningfulness, and E is for effectiveness. Now, let me just explain each in practical terms. Feasibility. What is feasibility? Who are working on diagnostic tools in further improving the diagnosis of liver cancer or hepatocellular carcinoma? Or that would be a bit complicated. Who works with patients with hepatocellular carcinoma or liver cancer? Can I see raise of hands? Can I see hands? Patients with liver cancer. Back home, liver cancer is the second most common cause of mortality. That is why our government is doing its best to ensure early detection of patients with hepatocellular carcinoma. Because we believe that early detection will provide early treatment that the patient will have a better chance of living. Currently, what the doctors use, I am a physiotherapist, the hepatologists use is, what they use are ultrasound, biannual ultrasound. They screen patients for 2 times in a year. But there is another instrument or diagnostic tool that came into the picture, and we call that the AFP, or the alpha-fetoprotein, which increases the success of detecting hepatocellular carcinoma. In practical terms, if I'm going to use biannual ultrasound plus AFP, or biannual ultrasound plus alpha-fetoprotein, I'll be able to detect early stage hepatocellular carcinoma. That's good for the society. They become more productive. Now, the question is, I know this is also your question, the question of by the government, can the government afford it? Can the government afford it? That is what you call feasibility. Even though it's effective, but the government or the hospital cannot afford it, then it is not feasible. You still cannot use it. All right? So that is what feasibility is about in the parlance of JBI. What is appropriateness? Blood transfusion is magical, right? For those who need it, but those whose religion is Jehovah's Witness doesn't allow blood transfusion. That is what you call appropriateness. What may be appropriate to you may not be acceptable to other patients. We take that into consideration. Not all effective treatments are used by the society because of the question on appropriateness, meaningfulness. Who is doing palliative care here? For physiotherapists, are you engaged in palliative care? Yes, I see them nodding. And I know that for the nurses, who are involved in palliative care? I know probably some of you are shy. I know that some of you may be involved in palliative care. It is effective. However, there are issues back home, or not but just back home, but internationally, on why it is still not being used in the hospital. And we got those through a systematic review, unrivaled those issues on why palliative care isn't existing in our setting. It's because of the hierarchical level of how the doctors will ask the PTs to treat their patients. We have that hierarchical system. And in our systematic review, we found out that it's one of the causes why palliative care is not existing in the mainstream treatment back home. How did we unravel that? Through a systematic review on qualitative study that determines the meaningfulness of an intervention. You see now the multifaceted role of the researchers? Your future role in case you will be interested in doing research. Effectiveness. This is what we know about. We kept on talking about effectiveness, and I think globally, everybody knows about effectiveness. All right? We do randomized controlled trial, pseudo RCTs, quasi RCTs, observational studies to determine the effectiveness of an intervention. That's pretty clear. But that E is only a portion of the FAME approach by JBI. This is a JBI model. At the center, you see the pebble of knowledge. The pebble of knowledge which has the FAME, feasible, appropriate, meaningful, and effective. The inner wedges show global health, evidence generation. Whoops. Evidence generation, evidence synthesis, evidence transfer, and evidence implementation. Let me run through these wedges. And the primary purpose of showing this is for us to realize that your primary research is just the start of evidence-based healthcare. It's not an end-all. Once you publish your research on primary studies, that is not an end-all. Why? Because the stakeholders, your patients, have not used it. The global health, that's the FAME. This is the global health. In global health, we check for sustainable impact. Worldwide, not just back home, resources are limited. We ensure that, the government ensures that, whatever they fund should be beneficial and effective to their constituents. Why? Because resources are limited, right? How are we going to make that sustainable? That's an issue when it comes to global health. How are we going to engage the hospital leaders in implementing the research? That's part of global health initiative. How are we going to link you, intelligent academic researchers, to your hospital champions? That is engagement. And that may not be really happening. The university may be separate from the hospital. And it has to come clear. Evidence generation. This is where you do your research, your primary study. This is where you ask your professors, is this effective or not effective? That's expertise. We've got people who we know and ask them for their suggestions. And we believe them. That's part of expertise, and that's also part of evidence generation. Or we do focus group discussion. Discuss about a certain topic and see what fits best. or what is best for the patient. And that's what you call discourse. You generate evidence. That is part of evidence generation. Undergraduate students doing their thesis is evidence generation, especially if you're doing a randomized controlled trial. Evidence synthesis. Did COVID-19 struck hard in India? I found my purpose during the COVID-19 pandemic while everyone was actually giving out PPE, personal protective equipment, what I was doing that time was synthesizing evidence for the government. The government needed us to synthesize voluminous data for them that will anchor their recommendation. That is what evidence synthesis is all about. You write evidence, and it is a skill. It is a skill. You write systematic review, evidence summary, which is a shorter version of a systematic review, and of course, you've got different societies. You've written clinical practice guidelines for those different societies. That's also evidence synthesis. Evidence synthesis is not an end-all. Evidence generation is also not an end-all. It is a wheel. Once you have synthesized the evidence, you need to transfer that evidence to who? To the champions in the hospitals, to the stakeholders, to your patients. And how do you do that? How do you do that? For the youngsters here, I'm not young anymore. I hope that I was young like you. But do you know, of course, of TikTok? Who knows TikTok? Oh, only few people are young here. Who knows Instagram? Now, a lot of younger people. You could actually actively disseminate your research evidence using those portals, not just your good-looking faces, all right, or the parties that you're engaged in. Disseminate the evidence that you found through TikTok or through Instagram. And of course, what are teachers for? We educate patients. We educate healthcare workers such as you. After the Kochi, I'll go to the Galgoshes University and teach their academic staff on how to do a scoping review. That is part of educating people on how to utilize these different types of reviews. And of course, systems integration, wherein evidence is actually placed into electronic medical health record, and it becomes synchronous with the hospital operation. This is where the big picture is, evidence implementation. And this is where the battle begins. Why? You found the treatment useful, but the champions in the hospitals do not mind. They never used it. Why? Because they don't have time to use it. Or because they believe in one medicine over the other medicine. That is where the battle begins. How are you going to integrate evidence into the local health system? That is what evidence implementation is all about. It is about facilitating change through champions, not only in the hospitals, but also in the university setting. It is about contextualizing the evidence. Possibly they're not using your intervention because no one knows how to use it. That's context. They've got evidence, you showed them the evidence, but they do not have the expertise. That's context analysis as well. 7 minutes more to go. That's a JBI model of evidence synthesis. It's a framework. It's a complete one. It's not just a concept. We are practically doing it back home through the support of JBI Adelaide. The last segment, systematic reviews. What are systematic reviews? In systematic review, we are writing the evidence considering that we've critically appraised them. You actually know that not all things that you see on the net has to be believed. You need to critically appraise the evidence. That is what we do in a systematic review. Whenever policymakers ask us to synthesize evidence, okay, we do a systematic review. We never do a scoping review. We never do a literature review. Why? Because in a scoping review and in a literature review, you do not critically appraise the papers. That's the major difference. I think any organization will tell you that critical appraisal is of primordial importance when you want to influence policy. What are the aims of this systematic review? Say, for example, I'm just making this up, spinal manipulation in study A is more effective than spinal mobilization. But in study B, it says otherwise. Spinal mobilization is more effective than spinal manipulation. And study C tells another scenario wherein spinal manipulation's effectiveness is the same as spinal mobilization. The question is, who are you going to believe? There is a way to answer that. You pull the evidence through a systematic review. A systematic review will uncover international evidence, will investigate conflicting results. And if there is a gap in the literature, it will tell you on your face that there is a gap in the literature. A systematic review will tell you certainty of evidence. What does that mean? It only means that I could say with confidence that this intervention works and this intervention does not work through systematic review. Through a systematic review. Not a scoping review, nor a literature review. What are the differences between a literature review and a systematic review? Let's check. In a literature review, the authors will actually put or select articles that they deem support their hypothesis. Most likely, they will jettison those articles that do not support their assumption. That happens in a literature review, right? The method is actually not rigorous in a literature review compared to a systematic review. More often, there is no methodology in a literature review. And because of this, there are systematic errors that happen in a literature review. Why the systematic error? Because most likely a literature review will lean towards the author's beliefs. Remember this, a literature review could be published with just one author. But you cannot publish a systematic review with just one author. It should be two or more, or you will not be able to publish a systematic review. You do not comprehensively search the databases in a literature review. It is unreproducible and not transparent. Now, what are the aspects found in a systematic review? You need to publish your protocol in a systematic review. More and more journals are not accepting a full-text systematic review without a published protocol. We need to check, we need to validate whether the authors have been reporting to what they should report. It's a structured research process that decreases or reduces biases. It involves checking 3 or more databases. It involves checking gray literature. We check clinicaltrials.gov, we check our libraries, we check ProQuest, okay, which house gray literature. And of course, the methods are transparent. They are reported. It's a formal type of research on its own. Let me point out to you the JBI Manual for Evidence Synthesis. If you want to write a systematic review, the JBI Manual for Evidence Synthesis is a wealth of information. It is for free. And we've been using that in helping our students, undergraduate students, write systematic reviews. Okay? In addition, of course, to the training that we provide them. So we've got the JBI Manual for Evidence Synthesis. You could also opt for the Cochrane Handbook or the Prisma 2020. A high-quality systematic review would clearly articulate objectives and questions, will have an eligibility criteria reported in the protocol, will have had searched multiple databases, and present and synthesize these extracted findings. Everything is transparent when you talk about a systematic review. These are my summary points. JBI is an international research center that advances evidence-based healthcare. There is a JBI Evidence Center at Kochi. Okay. Global health, evidence generation, evidence synthesis, evidence transfer, and evidence implementation work concurrently in ensuring use of evidence in healthcare delivery. And systematic review follows a methodological process ensuring recommendations for policy change is underpinned by the strength of evidence. Thank you very much for listening.
So thank you very much for a very extensive, exclusive talk about your presentation, especially about JBI and what it does, and about the evidence-based approaches, and about the evidence-based practice, especially and how to do a systematic review, and what is the difference between a systematic review and a literature review. It was much awful. So hope the audience would have got more information about your session. So each and every slide is more precise, clear, and easily understandable. So I don't have much question on your presentation, but a few couple of requests on this topic. The first one, in what way the meta-analysis will improve the statistical power? So it is the question that arises from my mind. So any answer for this?
Yes, Doctor. Thanks for the question. When we write systematic review, it always comes with a narrative synthesis. Okay? But there are systematic reviews wherein you can pool the data that you've extracted so long as the data are homogeneous. And then we pool them using Revman, and Revman will come up with a forest plot, and it will give you what we call a pooled intervention effect. Yeah. For example, there are 5 studies reporting different results. So the RevMan will pool those results together using statistics, and it will come up with one pooled intervention effect, wherein you could see you could take a look at the mean and the 95% confidence interval and see if the intervention is really effective or not effective. So meta-analysis will put more clarity in it, but it is not an essential part of a systematic review.
Okay, fine, sir. So my next question may be helpful for the audience. So what will be your valuable research tips for the young researcher or the beginner?
Sorry, can you repeat that?
The research tips for the researcher, young researcher or a beginner.
All right. For the young researchers, for the young researchers, my request is that your research question should be coming from your patients. What is the most important question that your patient is asking? It's not what is important to you. Always start with your stakeholders. What is important to them? And then transform that into a research question. That will fuel you in completing whatever you're doing, because you are actually practically doing it for another person who needs your help and not for you alone.
Fine, sir. Thank you. So next, I would like to get the questions from the audience. Yes.
Hello, sir.
Hi.
Yes, sir. Thank you so much for the wonderful and the lucid presentation.
Thank you.
But, sir, I have used JBI manual checklist for many in my systematic reviews. One flaws which I am finding in that, there is no cutoff values for JBI checklist. Whereas when we compare the other checklists like Newcastle, Ottawa scale and all, we have a clear-cut cutoff. So distinguishing between systematic review and literature review, what makes it different means the base of risk of bias. But by using JBI, we are not able to produce a very clear-cut idea that which is having high-risk bias, which is having low-risk bias, because it is purely subjective and there is no cutoff score. Please elaborate or further action on the same, please, sir.
Yes, thank you for raising that. JBI, like the other organizations, will have a critical appraisal tool based on the study design. So a randomized controlled trial will have a JBI critical appraisal tool that matches it. A quasi-experimental will also have a JBI critical appraisal tool that matches it. Now, you are correct. Most of the research centers, engage in this or which have come up with the critical appraisal tool will not directly tell you to score it as low, moderate, or high just by using their CAT. A JBI critical appraisal tool does not have that. It gives that obligation to the systematic review team, which comprises of academic researchers, content experts, statisticians, and patients. So they will decide if that paper is low, moderate, or high based on the risk of biases that are present and were detected using the critical appraisal tool. So it is actually given on the review team. Back then in 2024, if I'm not mistaken, the PDRO score will usually have a cutoff wherein they'll say if the score is 7 or less, you exclude that study. It has changed hips. Now, when we see a study eligible to be included in the systematic review, and that particular study okay, has a high risk of bias, we do not exclude it in the analysis. We take the evaluation into consideration using the grade pro approach. The grade pro will grade the papers based on the risk of bias, the inconsistency, right? The imprecision, the publication bias, among others. So there are a lot of layers in it, wherein that freedom to give your risk of bias assessment, I think, is still very much useful. Thank you.
Yes. Any questions? Okay, fine then. Okay, ma'am. Thank you, sir, for a wonderful session.
Thank you.
Thank you
Thank
so
you very
much.
much.
Thank you, Dr. Valentine, for your session. It was an enlightening session and a reaffirmation why the systematic review is important for all of us. So be here, both of you, please. I'll request Dr. Pushpa Sarkar to kindly come up on the dais and hand over a memento to our speaker. As a token of thanks and appreciation from School of Health Sciences, Dayanand Sagar University, we would like to present you a small memento and certificate to Dr. Valentine C. Thank you so much for coming. Thank you, sir. We would also like to extend our heartfelt thanks to Dr. P. Senthil Selvam for chairing the session. Thank you so much, sir, for doing the honors. Thank you, all of you. Thanks a lot. To continue the session further, we have our next speaker of the day, Dr.